And we're back talking with Doyle, with State Representative Doyle Heffley, the indomitable Hunter Kipe, and Chuck Nichols on the ones and twos. Representative Heffley, what are we talking about today? The budget was yesterday. That must be it.
Yes, we sat through a 2.5 hour, maybe it was 4 hour, I'm not quite sure, but who's counting, speech from our Governor Shapiro as he laid out his ideas for the 2024-2025 budget proposal. Now, granted, we just got the 2023-2024 budget proposal done right before Christmas last year because the governor was unable to wrangle the votes up out of his own Democratic caucus in the House.
But the budget is what we do.
Yes, but now, moving forward in the governor's budget address, I mean, I think there were a few points that I can agree with the governor on in that budget address. Some areas of where additional resources I think are needed. However, the overall budget that the governor proposed was a progressive wish list. I mean, pretty much every line item in the budget was increased, just throwing more monies with no accountability, creating brand new programs with no details of how those programs are going to be run or administered, hiring of thousands of new bureaucrats here in the Commonwealth. I don't think that's a plan to go forward. What the governor laid out was a $48.34 billion spending plan, which is an 8.4% increase, or an increase of about $3.7 billion. And unfortunately, when the governor looks at his math, and when we look at other entities like the IFO, the numbers don't add up. And really, with that increase in spending is going to cause us issues down the line. So it is certainly something that is very concerning because over the last 8 years, or the legislature has really worked all through the Wolf years to kind of keep Governor Wolf in check from his overspending. And at the end of that cycle, when I came in the first year under Corbett, we had a $4 billion budget deficit because of what had happened with Ed Rendell and the overspending that went on in his administration. And those first couple of years were tough. There were really difficult decisions that had to be made. And then you come back that when Wolf came in, he wanted a $3.5 billion tax increase the first year. We didn't give that to him. And then we went through, and at the end of his tenure, because of the responsible measures that were taken on by the House Republicans and the Senate Republicans, we actually had a budget surplus, and we had record amounts of dollars going to our public schools. So I think that this governor's proposal takes us back to the Rendell years when we're spending every nickel and dime in Harrisburg and depleting any kind of reserve fund, and that's going to really negatively affect the taxpayers. So I think the only person that wasn't mentioned in the governor's address yesterday were the hardworking men and women that are the taxpayers in this Commonwealth, because they're the ones that got totally overlooked by the governor in his spending plan.
But even to go back to the IFO, the Independent Fiscal Office, they're even concerned about it too, not even just on a Republican standpoint. They project that larger deficits in future years exceeding $3 billion annually, beginning in 2025 through 26, if the state continues its current spending trajectory. So obviously this just proves that higher taxes are coming down the pipeline for Pennsylvanians.
Yeah, you can't just continue to spend at these levels. I mean, you have growth that's built into the budget, and this year we actually approached the budget on maybe a little bit more sound footing than other years because of the things that long delay that we had with the governor last year. We even got our caucus, being in the minority in the House, still got some of their priorities pushed in there to drive some of these to stop some of this spending. But we really should be looking at about prioritizing spending. So if we're going to have additional spending, we need to make sure we're putting it into programs, after-school programs. I'm a huge supporter of those. I think they're great programs. They provide great opportunities for children, especially children that are at risk. Looking to try to work with the governor and increase that. If we're looking at the level up funding, which the governor actually cut out of last year's budget, we had prior to this Governor Shapiro, we had put about $225 million a year into level up funding for those underfunded schools. This year, the governor has put a new proposal, but I think we should really get back to that, driving those dollars out under the new funding formula to help those schools like Panther Valley. And he even mentioned Panther Valley yesterday, but what he didn't mention is last budget cycle, he forgot them, and he didn't give them the extra level up funding that they were getting the years prior. So I'm willing to work with the governor when it comes to level up funding, after school funding, making sure that we have programs in place for people that are dealing with substance use disorders and those measures. But at the same time, some of these new bureaucracies he wants to create at L&I, hiring more L&I folks to go out and harass small businesses. We should be wanting to partner and work with small businesses. Looking at avenues where we can help provide opportunities for businesses to grow. When they grow, revenue increases, and then state government has those resources rather than just spending down any kind of revenue or one-time surpluses. And then, in out years, we could be looking at a $3 to $7 billion tax increase by 26 or 27 if the governor continues under this projected path.
And you talked about spending money, especially one-time funds. Right now, we're sitting on a little bit of rainy day fund, but right now is not exactly a rainy day. We don't want to be burning through every last little bit of cash that we've got. And as you said, we're looking at projections that would put us in a deficit situation just a couple of years down the road, especially with these programs that are recurring spending. When do we get to a point, especially as a lawmaker like yourself, when do you have to say, enough is enough, I want to help the people, I want to provide these good programs, but we just can't spend any more money?
Well, if you look at this year, right now, we're about $170 million under projection in our revenue estimates, right? So that we're right now we're operating a little bit of a deficit, which we have not probably in about the last 5 years. Our projections have always come in higher. Now, last year, the governor did get a lot of his spending increases in play in the budget, and now we're looking at the issue of, wow, I mean, this is the first time in quite a while when we're actually, not meeting our estimates on a month-to-month basis for our revenue. And we're looking at some shaky ground here in the economy. I know people are struggling. I mean, inflation has really crimped how people are spending their money. They're spending more money on food and energy and have less money to spend on those extras. Tourism is a big thing in our state. It's one of our number one economic drivers. The number one industries is tourism and agriculture. And right now, with the decontinuation of the SNAP benefits that has affected our agricultural industries and with the tourism being kind of a luxury, so we want to make sure that we're not going to affect it. We want to make sure that we're not going to spend more money than we're taking in. And the governor's budget does that right now.
We are going to be spending more than we're taking in. This is frightening to me as a taxpayer. I don't want to spend more money. At the same time, I want to make sure on the important things in our budget that we are being taken care of. The one that I'm most concerned of, most people in our state are most concerned of, is education. We mentioned that we have to have some improvements in the special education and some after-school programs. Our courts have said that their entire basic education system needs to be better funded. $2 billion, though, that's a lot of money. He also wants to do some things for higher ed.
Yeah.
These are clearly things that are important to all the people in the Commonwealth. It helps our future. It helps our kids. But once again, what are we going to cut? Where can we look for savings in other places that we might be able to help out where it is most needed?
Yeah, I mean, when you're looking at educational opportunities for children, I mean, we fund K through 12. So everybody will say, well, look, we have a free education system. Kindergarten through 12th grade, we also have early childhood education. We have after-school programs. But when you say it's free, talk to the property taxpayers, and it's not free, right? We're spending an enormous amount of money on public education, and that is a responsibility of the legislature to do that. We need to address that funding formula. The courts said it was unconstitutional. I agree with the courts. I don't think the funding formula was. It's why we adopted the new funding formula back in 2017 to address the inadequacies, it's a tough word, in the system. But now the governor in this budget proposal, he talked about $2 billion, and that's a big number. Looking at how we're going to drive those dollars out and making sure that, if we're going to put $2 billion over here, it doesn't mean we can also spend another $2 billion over here. Where are we going to prioritize? And that when you look at budgeting, you're looking at prioritizing where those dollars are going, and also accountability. Our test scores have been coming down, so we need to make sure that we can't just throw money at the problem. The underfunded schools, that's a different matter than saying every school is going to get an increase without accountability. How do we have those accountability measures? One thing that I would say about the governor's budget address, he was proposing, I think, about $987 million increase in higher education. Now, we have basic education, which we have a court directive to fix the funding formula, and I'm all on board with that. But now we're going to give another $1 billion to higher education, which, with no accountability. We've already seen the anti-Semitism which has come out of some of these institutions, and Okay, they get rid of the president of the institution. What are they teaching in the classroom?
It's
What is
indoctrination behavior.
Indoctrination. I'm not just for throwing money at that, and I don't think the taxpayers are. So before I'm going to give $1 billion, a vote to give $1 billion to higher education, I want to see some relief to the property taxpayers in their basic K through 12 education line items in the budget before we create whole new levels of funding. The governor wants to consolidate our community college and our state universities. Our community colleges and the dual enrollment programs they offer are cutting edge, and that's what we need. I don't think we want to lump them in with the state system, which right now is struggling. I mean, I'm supportive of the governor's plan to, in concept, to regulate the skills games. They're all over in our society, right? They're in every convenience store, and I'm not opposed. I'm not a gambler, so I'm not opposed or necessarily supportive of gambling. But if we have these things out there and we can generate revenue to the state, the industry has said, hey, we want to come to the table. We want to be regulated. We want, we want to be licensed. So I think we should have that conversation. Is that a funding stream that we can bring on board for additional revenue for programs? Yeah, I think it is. I mean, I would rather see skills games paying a tax than working class families paying taxes. So I think that's a conversation we continue to move forward. I think the legalization of marijuana has a lot of hurdles. You're looking at the Clean Indoor Air Act. What do you do with neighbors who live in apartments, and you have neighbors that are using marijuana, smoking marijuana in their house? It draws other neighbors are complaining. I get these calls in my office all the time. So there's a lot of things that have to be addressed.
What are the hidden costs?
What are the hidden costs? But obviously New York and New Jersey have done it. They have not seen the windfall in state dollars that they thought they were going to. And there's also things that have to be addressed with the link between marijuana use and anxiety, increased anxiety, behavioral health issues, schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, especially when people at a younger age have been exposed to it and used that drug. So I think those are conversations we have to have moving forward. But once again, the governor it was a wish list of everything that he's talking about yesterday, but for 2.5 hours, he didn't talk about details. He got a lot of applause lines, but not a lot of details.
There was an awful lot of pie-in-the-sky ideas out there, and there wasn't a whole lot of details on how it's going to be funded. It's one thing to say we want new programs here, new programs there, upgrades here and there. Well, you can't fund it all.
I mean, the governor likes to talk about economic development and competition, or being more competitive here in Pennsylvania, which I'm all about. We should be producing steel in Pennsylvania. We should be building the best roads. We should have the best energy policies. But the governor says that he wants to compete with Ohio, but then he's putting Pennsylvania into RGGI, which is counterproductive, and that's why we have lost industries. I mean, billion-dollar industries, investments out of Pennsylvania went into West Virginia, Ohio, because the governor wants to put us into RGGI. So to him to stand up on a stage and say, I'm tired of losing to freaking Ohio, why doesn't he look at the Ohio model and say, Ohio doesn't have RGGI? Ohio works with their industries and partners with them to make sure that we have a clean environment, they have clean air and clean water, but that they can still develop natural gas, put in pipelines, and provide the infrastructure and what businesses, the regulatory practices that businesses need to be successful. Instead of saying he's going to give a grant program out to select industries. We should be creating opportunities. We can compete with Ohio. We can compete with anybody. We can compete with China. If the government would simply get out of the way and let businesses and industries operate, making sure that they're doing things to protect the environment, protect the community, and we can provide those good quality jobs and people can be productive members of our society without new spending.
And we could have all these programs funded not on the backs of the average taxpayer.
Well, I don't think we need all the programs that the governor's putting out there.
Maybe not all of them. Certainly some good ones.
Yeah, but if we're gonna look at prioritizing where those dollars are going to be spent, we got to prioritize it. But just a blanket say everybody, the governor. I mean, God bless him. Here he is, stands up and says everybody's going to get everything you want.
It's like Oprah.
And if you don't get it,
you get a car.
If you don't get it, you're going to blame the House and the Senate, because those are the guys and girls that are looking at the numbers saying, "Hey, Governor, we don't have the money to do this." It's like, hey, you can go to the store and you're going to buy one of everything, but he's not giving us the dollars to do it, right? Yeah. So with that said, it's going to be an interesting process as we move forward, going through the appropriations hearings. And I would suggest viewers, if they have the opportunity, to sit down and watch those budget hearings. They're pretty much live streamed on all the platforms here at the state. I know they're live streamed on my website. I will be down to question the Secretary of the Department of Health, Human Services, and also a DDAP, drug and alcohol providers, as we go through the budget as my role as the chairman of the Human Service Committee. And I will also be really looking at what we're going to do in that realm, because we're seeing that we did a lot of work, but we really have shifted, and we're still seeing these high numbers of overdoses and addiction in our communities. And I think that's what we need to be addressing in those hearings. I'm going to be bringing that to light. But I would encourage people to tune in and watch the budget hearings. You can learn a lot of information about some. Maybe we'll dig in to get some of the details of the governor's proposal.